Yo, 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 what's up, everyone? Let's talk aliens here. We're going to go over the latest UAP news. We're going to see what's going on, see what some people have to say, and we're going to give our thoughts. Well, how does that sound? So, without further ado, Digger, please stop, 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 please. I'm in the middle of something.
Unless you've been living under a rock or you follow the mainstream news, you are well aware of the 2.5 hour plus interview that just broke on News Nation from Jake Barber, a new whistleblower that came out. He claims to have direct involvement with the UAP crash retrieval program, which is just unbelievable. He goes through explicit detail in this interview. So I recommend watching the full interview, obviously on News Nation. Link is in the description, but I will go through and give my detailed reaction on the actual interview with as much detail as possible. As a former F-16 pilot and now UAP investigator for over 3 years, I think I can give some hopeful tips that you haven't heard before anywhere else. So thanks for being here, and please remember to smash that like button if you do like this content. Let's get to the reaction video. Chris Lato, welcome to Lato Files. After the initial video published an hour-long News Nation special, we really didn't learn many specific details. So in this 2.5 hour interview, we really learned a lot more about who Jake is, where he's coming from, and why he is going public with his amazing whistleblower claim. So what do we learn? That he grew up in the United States. According to the transcript, there's no specific location mentioned, but he was motivated by a desire to serve his country, jump out of airplanes, and kill bad guys, is what he said. He also has two grandparents, so a Navy and an Army grandparent who were instrumental figures in his life, and they were both, in the military. And he considers himself definitely a patriot, wants to make them proud. So he's kind of a troubled kid. He basically had divorced parents, and so he'd tell one parent he was at the other parent's house and then live out in the street. He basically said to stay out of the abusive home life. So what happened is he got in trouble a lot at school. He got in a lot of fights, and he was actually expelled from high school, he said. So his grandparents intervened, and he ended up joining the Air Force at the age of 17. So it's interesting, he was a aircraft mechanic, but listening to him, it is essentially he became a covert operator. And when he was going through special ops school, so combat controller, that is the special ops, one of the two special ops for the Air Force. So we have pararescue, who are actually your special ops medics. They defend the president, etc. And then you have combat controllers who specialize in bringing in air power. So those are the two special forces in the Air Force. And so while he's going through combat controller training, he was approached by two men, he said. So these men convinced him to actually become an aircraft mechanic, just a regular aircraft mechanic, but then on the side join a lot of clubs. So this was really interesting to me, how you actually have a covert operator, and it makes perfect sense, right? You're basically not going to have any paperwork trail for these guys. They're going to be on the side. And he says in the interview that the best part of covert operations, at least for how they operate, is the normal government has all these rules that they have to adhere by. So what they do is they actually don't have to follow those rules. They create these covert operators who have plausible deniability. Basically, if you're caught, like Mission Impossible, essentially, if you're caught, we will deny your existence. So what he did is he went and became an aircraft mechanic. And on the side, he would go and do these clubs, right? He would do parachute club and underwater diving with rebreather club. And he'd do combat club and shooting club, etc. And so he actually became a special operator, but was just a aircraft mechanic. So when they needed him, they would call him up to go to special missions. And so he went to a special mission in Bosnia, and that's where he was put forward for some sort of award, probably by the deployment operators, right? So he goes, He's in his operation. He does some heroic duty, defends some high value target. Sounds like he saved two people's lives. They put him in for a medal, right? That's normally what you do if someone does an act of heroism. And his superiors said, no, actually, you're not going to get that medal. We're not going to give it to you or grant it to you because that would have a paper trail of you having these skills, right? Why would an aircraft mechanic be in Bosnia under a NATO top secret clearance protecting high value assets, right? Just doesn't make sense. Jake Barber explains, though, he says what he feels is maybe been illegally, he kept a copy of that medal recommendation just to prove that it actually happened, right? And he has some other records that he was able to show to Ross Coulthard and verify that he did have these clearances and he was actually a covert operator because there's no paper trail, right? He argues the best way to have a covert operator is legitimacy. So there's no paper trail. These guys are not dumb. They know all of this stuff can be tracked. So they just paid him on the side essentially to go and have all these amazing skills, and then they could use him as a above the law kind of operator, licensed to kill, if you will. So he actually learned to fly a helicopter and ended up being a security and transportation specialist, is what he says. What a covert operation name, right? I'm a security and transportation specialist. That's the guy you probably need to get you out of difficult situations. And he transitioned to covert operations during his career. And sounds like it really happened after 9/11. He said that was the turning point for him. He left the military to work as a defense contractor. And so he continued working on classified operations, this time focusing on advanced aircraft retrieval. And he says he operated in the range, he called it. And he also mentioned the high Sierras. So, where did he actually operate? He mentions in the interview it's the highest mountain range in the United States. And so I thought that was the Rocky Mountains, right? But it's actually not. If you look, Mount Whitney is actually the tallest mountain, 14,505 feet in the contiguous US. And that's in the Sierra Nevadas, right? Right north of the Mojave Desert. So if we look here, there is Los Angeles, and then you have the Mojave Desert here, right? And this is where you have Edwards Air Force Base. Look at that. Edwards Air Force Base is a famous test base for the Air Force. And inside this complex, it's the R2508 complex. So Mount Whitney's up here near Sequoia National Forest. And then you have the Mojave Desert here, basically Edwards Air Force Base. And you also have China Lake. And China Lake is just famous as well, right? And they do a ton of weapons testing out there. So surprised to hear it's not in the Area 51 range. It's out in the Mojave Desert. It sounds like where they're doing a lot of these tests, weapons tests, right? This isn't normally training. Okay, and this is R2508. This is from the Complex Users Handbook, right? You see here, Naval Air Warfare Center, Edwards Air Force Base, and weapons tests. Okay, so this is a vast network, and I can tell they do weapons tests probably is because this is from surface to unlimited. Okay, and this is an R area, surface to unlimited. We have another one, another surface to unlimited. So these are fully roped off, right? You're not going to have any airlines flying through this area, and it's a very large area, and it goes up into the Sierra Nevadas, up here, out probably into Nevada. You know, you have Death Valley on the east and all Mojave Desert out here. So if we go back to the range out here, this is the area he's talking about is the highest mountain range up here in the Sierra Nevadas over into the Mojave Desert. And this matches up also with what Dr. Stephen Greer has said. It's out in the Mojave Desert. And Mike Herrera said he flew out to California and flew out to a black site somewhere out in the desert near California. If you're flying by a helicopter, you're not flying that far, right? So I think this is where the range is in range 2508. So for Congress, you know, where to go and look. Here we go. We have a whistleblower with firsthand knowledge.
Okay. I need to address this right now. If there is indeed alien reproduction vehicles in existence with our government, organizations, military, what have you, That essentially is God tier technology. You can't make them give it to you when like who's who's piloting these things, who's controlling these things. These craft are capable of doing things that go beyond conventional physics. That's why I say God tier technology. And I just don't see how they're ever going to actually be able to force them to do anything. As long as they hold those craft physically, they can get them from one place to another like that. Something to think about.
Sounds like you go to that range complex and see what's going on out there. That would be a good start. So his specialty as a defense contractor, retrieving probably weapons, advanced weapons. He mentioned hazmat, so he's used to dealing with hazardous materials. So he's probably working on the range as a defense contractor, bringing back any sort of missiles that they're shooting or craft that they're testing. Sometimes if a weapon system goes offline, they have to blow it up, etc. And so he probably goes and retrieves these things so that none of our adversaries, etc., can go and get them. Right? It's very advanced, sensitive equipment, and so he's probably very good at going with his team and recovering these objects. So, who would you use if you need to recover some sort of hazardous material UAP? You're going to use the same team. And so that's how he basically fell into working on UAP retrievals, is through his expertise already and covert nature, right? You're going to want someone who's not on the books. You're using them already as a special operator. These are the guys you can call in. And again, you can just say, we've never heard of this guy. There's no record of him. So he has plausible deniability. So that's the people you're going to use. So he's an entrepreneur. Lieutenant Colonel John Blitch said that he's a multimillionaire. That is Jake Barber. And now he's actually founded Skywatcher, and that's a private organization. He says they have venture capital funding, and they are going to use the same team made up of what he later says are psionic assets, people that can call down, summon, if you will, the UAPs, and then convince them to land or at least get some sort of evidence, ideally.
Okay. He's talking about psionics. You know what we call that? That's called CE5. That's what that's called. CE5, people. Psionics is just a fancy word that sounds less, maybe it has less stigma, I guess. Kind of like UAP and UFO. But I can tell you this much, it does work. Now, if these guys are really capable of summoning craft, they must, I can just tell you this much, they must have experienced a lot of weirdness, a lot of high strangeness. It comes with the territory. Curious.
Hard evidence, right, of the crap themselves. And that way we don't have to actually ask the government for any sort of release of classified information. If you can do it for real, now that puts tremendous pressure on the government to release all the information that they know, right? They have to actually start releasing information to try and get ahead of these guys. So he's actively collaborating, he said, with government agencies. He didn't mention them, but he said they are working with him and venture capitals. He says he has funding to bring that sort of hard evidence to the public. So he's leading efforts to build public private partnership for UAP research and development. Quite exciting. So now let's go through the major claims that he made in the interview. So the first thing is he encountered a non-human craft and felt a profound spiritual connection. And so this is actually when he moved a 8-gon. So the 8-gon doesn't sound like his first encounter with UAPs, right? That sounded like it was actually the white egg encounter. But the 8-gon really changed his life, is what he said. And that's when he had this profound spiritual connection or some sort of connection with the non human intelligence, is all we can decipher from that. So as he's approaching the object, right, it's already been prepared for pickup. So he has some sort of small team on the ground that put it in some sort of sling for him to pick up with his helicopter as he's approaching it alone, right? I also thought it was interesting. He's doing this operation totally alone in his helicopter. I would think you'd have multiple people, but again, the less people, the better, right? So I imagine this is a very small team. You have the team already set it up for pickup, and he's flying in to pick up the actual object. And as he's approaching it, he starts feeling this intense emotion, right? And initially said it's happiness, intense joy, also with sadness and beauty. And he relates it to some sort of feminine, godlike presence. And it literally connected to his soul, he said. And so as he's approaching this object, he's having difficulty just flying the aircraft. And flying a helicopter is difficult in itself, right? So flying helicopters is not very easy. I've tried a few times on simulators and it is not straightforward at all. Okay, so it is difficult in itself. And then flying a helicopter in high altitude or hot terrain is also extremely difficult. That alone is also difficult. Assuming this is out in the desert, right? Let's say it's not in the mountains. It's still difficult because you're flying at night and he's flying under night vision goggles. So this is not a simple mission. Okay, so he's a very capable, experienced operator in a difficult mission, and he's flying it alone. Okay, I am used to that as a F-16 pilot. We were single seat aviators, so I am used to that. And you are definitely tuned into everything about your body, how you're operating, etc. So the fact that he can't fly the aircraft or he's having difficulty is really probably one of the only times this has ever happened to him, if I had to guess. So he's coming under this extreme stress from this amazing connection with whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was talking about. The weird, the although he said this was the first time he ever experienced that. Um, I imagine seeing something like that close. A lot of weirdness would be radiating off that thing. Like a hot turd.
And it gets stronger and stronger as he gets to the pickup site. And as he's hovering over it, he says he's actually starts crying because it's just so
You
intense.
got a hot
And then
turd?
he's wondering why he's crying. Is he having some sort of physical, mental breakdown or something? And should he abort the
I
mission?
love you, boy.
But if he aborts the mission now, he's going to put everything at risk. Someone will have to come out again later on. He's going to let his whole team down. So he basically just struggles through like any special forces operator or single seat
down.
aircraft operator. He just struggles through it miraculously
Get down.
and is able to carry the object
Get
back.
down.
I think he said 20 minutes is actually the distance. So probably 30 miles is the distance he's going. Helicopters don't fly that fast, probably, especially with some sort of load. And so this instance changed his life path after that. And he said this is actually what's guiding him to come out now and release all this information
This right here.
publicly. And if you can,
This right here. Did you hear that? After his experience, he had the urge, the want to come forward, to spread the truth. That is what I, myself, have experienced and try to reciprocate. The experience that I took in, I want people to know that these experiences do happen. They are real, they are spiritual, and they are physical. You go on Reddit right now. Go to experiencers subreddit, UFO believers, aliens. There's a the holographic or simulation theory subreddit. They're full of people people that have out of body experiences, astral projection, near death experiences, paranormal encounters. A lot of these people have had some type of triggering event, like an awakening. I went through it with when my my initial sightings that I had was my triggering moment. And after that happened, I was almost like a magnet for all sorts of phenomena. Everything from UFOs flying in the sky to orbs manifesting next to my face to Bigfoot stomping in the woods, 30 feet from me around my tent. The phenomenon is real. He just, all you have to do is just look. If you notice, there are so many people that, you know, they're labeled as crazy, crazy people, you know, but we're not crazy. We have all experienced an awakening in some type of enlightenment, and we all have the same mission, the same message to spread the truth and to wake people up to the reality that there is much more to this universe than what's being told to us. We're being lied to. That simple.
Imagine how terrifying it is for someone who's a special covert operator. His whole life has been a secret for the last 2 or 3 decades. And now he's going to just come release that information to the public about such a heavily stigmatized topic. I think it's very dangerous and terrifying. And he even talks about later when he went to talk to the Senate, sounds like the Senate Armed Services Committee, the staffers and the senators themselves, at least Congress. He has talked to congressmen. He asked them for help initially, and that was the most disconcerting part of this whole thing. It sounds like when he asked them for help, they ended up turning it around and they asked him for help on how they can secure their own safety, right? Think about that. The people you go to, like going to the police and saying, "Hey, can you help me? I have this serious issue. There may be people trying to kill me." And the police are like, "Hey, I have this serious issue. Can you help me? There may be people trying to kill me." Can you imagine?
Oh my
Oh man, that
God.
would be terrifying. So at that
Oh, that's not good. That is not good. We're in more trouble than I thought.
point, sounds like his only way forward, at least that he feels, is going public, right?
Yes, that is the way. This.
So security, safety could be
Let's go!
being a public figure now.
Let's
So
go,
if he
boys.
is
Let's
killed, a person
go.
who's very good at
We're gonna
not
go.
dying, right, in all
We're
sort of
going.
situations, person that's not dying and said they had firsthand contact information, all of a sudden, if they end up dead now, then it really looks suspicious and could even make this story more wide open than it already is. So that was quite interesting. Okay, and I'll just talk about this now since it's a good segue. So the Aegon craft, so that's the thing that really connected to him, changed his whole life path,
Stop.
leads back
Dig.
to Mike Herrera. So I
Stop.
did an interview with Mike Herrera over
Dig.
a year ago. I had it in
Stop.
2 parts, and I recently released it last month
Outside.
because I knew that the insiders were coming out. And since Mike
Yeah.
said all of these things about the helicopter retrievals, how they're actually doing it, he relayed everything in this long form interview I did with Mike Herrera. And Stephen Greer mentioned that the insiders were linked to Mike Herrera. So I put two and two together and essentially assumed, speculated correctly that it had to be these guys, right? And so Mike Herrera actually met Jake Barber at this event in 12 June 2023. And that was David Greer's disclosure event. And Mike Herrera, when he came out in a very brave manner, I believe, again, hugely stigmatized topic, and he's received an amazing amount of trollery and attacks on his integrity, saying he's a liar, etc. And think about this: you served your country. If all of this is true, you come out and say the truth at definite personal risk to yourself, right? At least your credibility, and if not worse, and you just get called a liar and a grifter, etc. So my
Dude, I am so tired of that word. I am so tired of that word. Grifter. Grifter. Everyone's a grifter. Jesus Christ, give me a effing break already.
Mike was not happy about that. I can tell you. And
It's like people go out like, okay, anybody that has comes out, claims to be a whistleblower, has information, can only talk to a skiff, but here, buy my book. That's the argument they always put out. But you have to understand, these people are sacrificing their future employment by saying the things that they are saying. So, what is wrong with them getting a book deal? They're not getting rich from a freaking book deal. All right, it might keep food on the table, might keep pay the bills, but it ain't gonna make them rich. Okay, let's just be like straight up with that. I think we can all agree. Books, come on. That's that's old hat. It's all about media these days. Um, but yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with people writing a book about what they experienced and what they think they're in their opinions. And if they make a few bucks off it, you know what? Okay, so what? Give them a break. We're all in the rat race to survive. So what? One person making money over another person's way of making money is better than the other. Like, let's get real. All right, we are all here. We are all clawing to survive. Okay, they are sacrificing their future employment and any past experience they have with whatever jobs they've worked. Basically, goes up in flames. Like no one's gonna hire them. I mean, maybe, but mainstream like big corporations for like security detail or whatever job they're trying to get, they have videos of these people coming out saying, "Hey, I I reverse engineered a craft, or we picked one up and we retrieved it." People are gonna try to make you out to look like a fucking loon, all right? So let's just be real about the whole situation, about the whole big picture, okay? I don't think there's anything wrong with someone trying to keep food on their table.
I think he feels very vindicated now that the information is finally coming out. But at this event, 12 June 2023, Mike relays his own experience coming in contact with the phenomenon, and it was coming upon a operation where a very large octagon shaped craft was loading up equipment. And when Mike basically gave all the details of this craft that he saw, the octagon shape of it, the 8 sections, how it looked, all the details of it, Jake Barber was there. Okay. And Jake Barber knew what was in the containers. And what you had containers which had HVAC equipment on them. And originally Mike said, hey, this was for drugs or guns, some sort of other climate controlled,
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end this right there. This is basically the gist of what I wanted to go over. I hadn't even seen this, but it was good content, I think. We hit some pretty important points, and with that said, think about what we discussed in these few little segments that we went over. Um, there's more people out there that are going through these things than you think. They're just too afraid to talk about it. So we need to learn to come together, learn to have an open mind, open heart, and come together and move forward. With that said, my name's Jeremy. This is Let's Talk Aliens. You guys have a good night.